We're here today in Lennar's newest, most exclusive community in Southwest Florida, Sandy Key. I'm here with Ryan Reynolds, real insurance expert. I have a couple questions I'm going to bounce off of him, and he can offer some insight and advice as to what you're looking to accomplish for your insurance purposes. Ryan, you want to give a little introduction of yourself?
Sure, thank you, Colton. Yeah, so I work with Galt Insurance Group. We're an independent insurance agency out of Naples. I've been with that agency for 14 years. They've been writing insurance locally around Southwest Florida for 20 plus years now. So the nice thing about the independent model, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is that we don't represent the insurance company. We actually represent the client and find the best possible need for them. So there's no allegiance to any one insurance company. We're simply going to analyze the needs of the client and explore the best options for them to assist. Obviously, new construction is very helpful with that, so we'll have tons of options. We represent over 20 different home insurance carriers, FEMA flood options, non-FEMA flood options. So, the fact that we've been around for so long, we've got a variety of options for, virtually all your insurance needs.
Awesome. Now that's very helpful, especially for those first, starting off looking for answers to those insurance questions. So when you're looking for a policy and you're going through this process, what do you think is one of the most common mistakes that homeowners make when they're choosing their insurance?
Yeah, I would say, for a new construction and even a new purchase, the biggest mistake is that people think they need to insure the home for what they are paying for that listing price of the house. So, any listing price is going to include some land value, and we don't take that into account when we're insuring a home. We're strictly looking at a rebuild cost of the home. So it's very common in Florida that the dwelling coverage and what you're insuring the home for is less than the purchase price. That'll help keep your costs down as well. It'll make sure that you're not paying for coverage that you don't benefit from.
No, that's perfect. And that was actually one of the things I was going to ask you is, the difference between your actual cash value and the replacement cost of your coverage. So that does offer a lot of insight into that. That's great. When you are looking for a policy, how can you ensure that you have the right coverage for what you're looking to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say, the answers for a new construction home are much different than for an older home. So the beauty about buying a new construction property is that your policy is not going to get hit with a lot of limitations. So they're not going to say, hey, you've got old pipes, we're limiting water damage claims, or you've got an old roof, we're going to pay you the depreciated value rather than what it costs to replace that roof new. So, buying a new build or something close to a new build is really your best defense to getting some good policy terms and great policy language. So I would say that's the easiest thing that you can do. The other thing is just maybe when you get your proposal or you get your quote, you just run through it with the agent on the phone. You don't get it and just say, okay, here's my insurance. You talk through all the items and ask what your exclusions are. If you've got jewelry, firearms, fine arts, all of those things have limitations on them. So it's worth discussing with your agent and running through that quote with them.
Okay, terrific. No, that makes sense. I guess that kind of allows me to pivot a little bit into what are some of the factors that you see traditionally that will impact what your monthly or annual premium looks like?
Yeah, the biggest thing right now is obviously going to be the year built is the biggest cost driver on what your home insurance runs. So the newer the home, the better rates you're going to get. That goes up until maybe if you're right on the beach, then that's another story. But yeah, buying a new home, that's the number one rate. From there, I would say occupancy. If it's something where you're going to be renting the home or you're living there seasonally, those things do affect the cost. The other factor would be, whether or not flood insurance is required. If flood insurance is not required, then that's a big weight and a big cost off your shoulders where your lender's not going to require it. That's a huge monthly cost that you can avoid. So making sure that home is not in a flood zone is going to be very beneficial for a buyer.
Oh, and I appreciate that transition too, because that's going to be one of the big catalysts here in Sandy Key, is as we're building out this community, our point of emphasis was an elevation that would allow us to essentially be in a position where flood insurance was not required. I say that right now we have a conditional LOMAR, and for those who don't know what that is, it's a letter of map revision. It's essentially us submitting a request to FEMA to ask them to, relook at the survey of the land because we have built our homes above that threshold that requires or would require flood insurance. So once we receive that approval from FEMA, how do you think you would see these insurance rates differ from if we were to remain in a flood zone like many of the other communities in the area?
Yeah, so the biggest factor is that it would be optional, so you don't have to purchase flood insurance.
Okay.
So that's something that if you're trying to qualify for a mortgage, that's a factor that you don't have to be concerned with. So, you could still choose to buy flood insurance, and that's not going to be something that the lender's looking at. So it kind of helps from a qualification perspective. So that's a huge win right there. And it is very common that neighborhoods will start out in a flood zone, but they bring in the fill and they elevate them and they have them removed from a flood zone. So that's certainly a very common thing, and excellent that Lennar is doing that for this neighborhood. From a cost perspective, if we can get that home removed from a flood zone, that might affect the cost between 30 to 40%. That might open up the door for private flood options to come in and have better rates than FEMA. It's just really on a case-by-case basis.
Terrific. And I think that's gonna answer a lot of the questions for the folks coming in, because those who are familiar with the area or those who are familiar with the news the last couple of years, we have had some storms come in, and we have found our location in the midst of that conversation in terms of flooding. But since we have been able to elevate the builds of these homes, we're trying to basically restructure how those insurance rates are going to look and make them a little bit more feasible for the folks who are moving down here, whether it be full-time, part-time, whatever the case may be. So, on a year-to-year basis, I know you probably want to review your policy, but in your expertise, how often do you think that you should be reviewing your coverage?
That depends on the individual and how many life-changing activities they have going on. I mean, there's a lot of individuals that are constantly buying a vehicle or doing a replacement, or maybe they're buying another property or a rental property. So, I would say it's easy just to touch base with your agent once a year and just have the conversation about maybe what changed in your life. Maybe you set your home up in a trust, or you purchased another vehicle, or, you've got a rental property up north or a vacation condo. All of these things, sometimes someone will forget to tell their agent, but if you check in quickly each year, you can see what changed. And then, the insurance agent does a great job at identifying, okay, what do we need to update on your insurance policies with the addition of another vehicle or home or whatever the case may be.
No, that's terrific. That's all very insightful knowledge, some items that I was unaware of, so that provided me with a few more talking points, so I can better help my customers as they come in. Again, we are in Lennar's newest, most exclusive Southwest Florida community, Sandy Key, positioned right between Catalpa Cove and Colusa Creek. I'm going to begin to do a couple different reviews from vendors around the area, just to offer a bit more exposure to the neighborhood, because I think this, when it's all said and done, this is going to be a terrific place to call home. Ryan, I appreciate everything. I appreciate your expertise. Do you have anything